Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. I'm Fantasia and this is Sewing with Tay from the Aya Emporium. Today I'm doing a sew along for a balloon sleeve top. This balloon sleeve top can be made in many fabrics. It can be made in a bunch of different variations. So I'm just going to show you how the basics and then y'all can do it however if it's your style. It's super easy. It's literally four like rectangles, so super beginner friendly. I'm kind of going to walk you through the details and I'm going to walk you through sewing it. If that's your cup of tea slash coffee, because I'm a coffee girl, I hate tea. If that's your cup of coffee, hit the like button and the subscribe button so you know when I'm making new videos. So we're going to get into the first steps of the sew along. So for this top slash dress, I would suggest 2.5 to 3 to 4 yards, depending on how big you want to go. I use 2.5 to 3 yards for my top. I used a little bit more for the dress because I made it a little bit longer. I did use cotton fabrics. I actually bought the Kona cotton from Joann's. That's like 108 inches wide with a like 40% off coupon. Real cost efficient for me. So that's what I'm gonna be using today. And I think I might have used like a yard and a half, but it was 108 inches wide, so I still have fabric left over. So you're going to need your body widths, and you're going to have to make a decision on how big or dramatic you want your sleeves, how long you want your top and or dress to be, and how oversized do you want it to be in general. So to put it in perspective, based on the picture I showed you guys of me in the denim looking top, my bust measurement is 44 and my top bust was 88. So 44 in the front, 44 in the back. So that's how I got that oversized spec. So I'm not going to tell you what size to make, but you can decide how much fullness you want in your top. So if your bust is 36 and you want to double it or you want to do 1.5, that's your business. So just for perspective, that's the ratio that I'm using. I'll show you kind of the graph that I kind of made of like what the patterns would look like so you can determine how big you want things to be, and then I will also show you what numbers I used on my top. So you have a front, a back, and 2 sleeve pieces for your 4 pattern pieces for this top slash dress. So you need to decide how big you want your neck width to be. For my neck width, I chose 8 inches. So that means these pieces are all cut double. So that means I needed to cut away 4 inches at the front and the back, as you can see by the 2 4-inch arrows at the front and the back. I'm going to go down 1.5 at the back, center back, and I'm going to go down 10 at the front. So you see 10 by 4 and 1.5 by 4. These are sections that you're going to cut out of your rectangles. I'm going to take a step back here. So my length is 32 inches from the shoulder to the hem. My width is 22 inches from center front to the side seam. So that is the length and width of both the front and the back before the neck cutouts. This sleeve is less dramatic than the sleeve that I just showed y'all in the picture. It's a little bit narrower. So you'll see I have a 10-inch armhole opening. I have 15 inches where the sleeve joins the armhole, and the sleeve is 14 inches long. So that's a little bit narrower than what is on the picture. And here's a different reference. So this sleeve here is a 15-inch at the body and 10 inches long. So it's a little bit bigger. Alright, we're going to start here with our body. So this is my rectangle that I started with, and I'm going to start with the front. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark over 4 inches from that center front edge. All of my pattern pieces are including seam allowance. So basically just add an inch into whatever you want to make your body with. So I marked 4 inches here. And then I want a deep V, so I'm going to mark 10 inches. So that center front has a center front seam, so you have to remember to leave half an inch there. I'm measuring out the half an inch. So your V doesn't go all the way to the end, it goes to the seam allowance. So now I am going to get my ruler so that I can draw a straight line from that mark from the front neck drop to my neck width. And then I am going to get my good scissors and I'm going to cut out this neck. And then the front body will be ready to sew. and then we'll start on the back body. So here's the back. So we're going to do a 1.5 back neck drop. So you'll see me measuring down 1.5 from that edge. This is the back body, does not have a center back seam, so it is cut on the fold. Uh, or I cut this on the fold. You don't have to, but I chose to cut this on the fold. So I did not do a side seam. But this is, I did 4 inches at the neck width and then 1.5 at the center back. So you're just going to draw that curve there so you get a back neck width curve. This curve is a little bit deep, so you want to do a nicer curve than this, but I'm really just making this for the demo, so I'm like, it's okay if it's not perfect. So here I'm cutting down the neck width, and then I'm going to curve it just a little bit to get a better shape here in the neckline. So this is cutting out so you have room for your back neck width and your back neck drop. After we do this, the first thing we're going to do is sew the shoulders together. So the back was on the fold, so I'm just going to open it up. I'm going to take my front piece and I'm going to match it right sides together on the left and the right shoulder. I'm going to take this to the machine and sew it up real quick. I will say I did not show all of my serging, but since this is cotton and I don't want a bunch of fraying, I did serge all or most of my edges just to make sure that my garment stays clean. So I'm just stitching everything at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So this is me sewing my shoulders together. The few times that I have made this top, I prefer to clean finish the neck edge with interior binding, and I prefer to do it before I sew the center front seam together because I think you get a better V. So here I have brown interior binding, I have brown twill tape because that's just the color I have, and I'm like, I didn't really want to buy nothing else. So I'm using this brown twill tape to make interior binding, so I'm going to sew it down at a 1/4 inch and then flip it inside to the interior of the garment and top stitch. I like doing this because I think it just really makes the V look super clean. You can also do this with a facing if you feel like making a facing, but I felt like this is a super easy garment and we don't need all that extra stuff. I felt like this tape from Joann's worked just fine, and when I got done I will give it a good press so to make sure that it is laying flat. I went ahead and popped my label in there while I was here, and then we're going to move on to the next step, which is sewing up the center front seam. So I'm going to align those center front corners for the V, and then we're just going to stitch down at a 1/2 inch to 3/4. I like to do a little bit more because I like to make sure that the miter is completely straight because I don't want my neckline to gap. So I'm going to sew straight down, and then when I get done with this, I am going to take it to the serger and clean finish the edge. Sometimes I would serge those separately, but this time I did not. So my shoulders and my center front and neckline is clean finished. So now we're going to mark where your armholes are. So this right here, this length is 10 inches. This is where I mentioned to you before on the denim one, this length is 15 inches. So you get a much bigger sleeve opening and it's a little bit more dramatic. After making this, I feel like I might want to go back and do 15, but that's definitely a choice. That's definitely based on your personal preference. So from the shoulder down, I'm going to measure 10 inches and I'm going to mark it with chalk, and then I'm going to take my scissors and make a clip. This is where your armhole will be attached. So from the front body at the clip all the way to the back body is where I'm going to attach the sleeve. So here is my sleeve. It is 15 inches, so that I'll have a 1.5 to 1 shearing ratio. I'm going to take that to my sewing machine, and I'm going to gather only one side so that I can gather it to make 20 inches, 10 in the front, 10 in the back. So this is currently 30. I'm going to gather it up till it equals 20 inches, and then I'm going to attach it to the body and sew them together. So for your basting, make sure you turn your machine on 5, pull your threads a little bit long, and sew along whatever side you want your basting to go on. I'm going to tie a knot on one side, and then I'm going to pull the bobbin thread on the other side to get gathers. And I'm using my ruler that's on my table here to make sure this length is 20 and that the shearing width, the shearing laying down on the sleeve is even and it's not all to one side or the other. here is my body. Those are my two notches for my sleeve. This is my sleeve. So I'm going to pin the ends together like so, and then I'm going to pin it in the middle to make sure that no pieces of the sleeve gets caught or falls away from the needle, because it's annoying when you have a hole in your sleeve. So once we get this all pinned, and you want to make sure that your shirring is even, so you'll see me kind of moving it around a little bit to make sure the shirring slash gathering is like in the same place. Ensure that you remember to switch your machine back to your standard stitch length, because if you sew this at 5, you're going to be very upset with yourself. Back stitch, and then I stitched along the edge where the shirring stitches are. I would caution you to take your time on this part to make sure that you're not moving your gathering around, and that that the gathering is landing where you want it to be. So this is my sleeve opening. I'm going to pin them together at the underarm, and then I'm going to pin the bottom of the sleeve together at the armhole seam, and then I'm going to pin along the side seam. This dress definitely needs pockets. I might go back and add the pockets, because once I had them on, I was like, I kind of wish I had pockets. So I'm going to sew up the side seam a 1/2 inch. I started at the hem. You can start at the sleeve opening if you want to. That's your business. So here we go. I'm going to sew it all together at the side. Once I get to the armhole seam, I'm going to sew up a little bit till I get that 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to rotate and then sew all the way down to the sleeve opening. The sleeves on this top are elasticated, which is why they make that like balloon shape. So you'll see here, this is the edge of my sleeve. This width here is that 15 that we cut originally, but you can always make this bigger if you want more fullness. I'm just going to fold up like 3/4, and I already serged the edge of this, so I don't have to do it now. I'm going to sew 3/4 to create a casing so that I can insert elastic. I have been sewing for a long time, so if you're a beginner, I would suggest marking and pressing your turn back before you sew it. I can sew this 3/4 pretty easily, so I did it without measuring. Alright, we're actually almost done. So once you get your turn back pressed, leave a little opening about a 1/2 inch to an inch. I tested out how big I wanted my elastic to be, and I cut 2 pieces, one for each sleeve. I used the safety pin method to channel the elastic through the tunnel, and it only took me a few minutes because this is not that big of a space, but I did put a pin at the end of the sleeve to hold it, because sometimes they do get pulled into the sleeve since the sleeve is so big and the elastic is not. So I'm going to get my elastic out the other side of the tunnel, and then I just popped a stitch in there to hold my elastic together. And voila, here is your elasticated sleeve opening. So the last part I'm going to do is a hem. When I tried the dress on during this process, I felt like it was a little bit long. So I'm like, I don't want to cut this. I'm just going to put a 2.5 inch hem in it and make it look a little extra special. So here we are. I am pinning a 2.5 inch hem. I am pinning and pressing this hem because I don't sew 2.5 inch hems normally, so I can't say that I might not make a mistake. So I am measuring and pinning and pressing for this 2.5 inch hem. So this is the last step of the dress. I'm just going to top stitch my hem so that it is secure, and then I'm going to try it on to make sure I don't have any final requests of changing or fit issues that I didn't notice before. But that is all. This is my very simple dress, and I'm going to walk over to my mirror so you guys can see it. Here it is. So the body widths are about the same as that denim one I showed you guys in the beginning. The sleeves are obviously a lot smaller. I'm thinking I might go back and make these sleeves a little bit longer, but you still have all the fullness in the body. It's still a super easy dress and super beginner friendly, and there's so many ways to style this. Definitely can't wait to see what you guys will make with these. But until next time, bye. Happy sewing.